So this is an interesting question. Is it possible to reward anxious behaviour? We're often told that we shouldn't give our dogs attention when they're being anxious. If they're afraid of fireworks, we shouldn't try to cuddle them. We shouldn't try to soothe them, because they'll find this rewarding and encouraging, and it will just encourage them to do these things more often. But is it actually possible to reward anxious behaviour? Given the fact that when a dog is being very anxious, they're actually in fight or flight mode. That mode has been triggered within their brain. They had no control over that. It was a purely physical reaction to being in a situation that was making them afraid. So as soon as that fight or flight mode got triggered, they're no longer in their thinking brain, actually. They are reacting to their environment. They are in self-preservation mode. They're in survival mode. They're not responding to things the same way they would normally. They're being reactive. And that part of the brain, when that's triggered, its only goal is to keep you alive. So when you get to the end of that fearful experience, if you're still alive, your reactive brain will trigger the reward center and say, that was a successful behavior choice, we'll do that again. But they're not going to be remembering a lot of it. What they were remembering is that they were into a panic, that they were hiding, that they were trying to avoid whatever it was that was making them anxious. So if it was fireworks, they were probably trying to hide under a blanket. They were probably trying to snuggle into something. They were trying to get into a position where they couldn't hear them as well, or couldn't see them. If they were afraid of something in their environment, maybe a dog has come into the park and they're scared of dogs, so they would have reacted perhaps more in a kind of a lunging and barking aggressive kind of a way. Perhaps if they're scared of your next door neighbour, they might have tried to avoid them and run away from them. But whatever behaviour they were doing when they were in that fight or flight mode, that survival mode, that's their reactive brain making those choices. So when they come back to earth again and the situation resolves itself and they start to feel better, then the rest and digest part of their brain kicks in and it will take over what's happening in the brain. So the fight or flight mode ends. So all of the parts of the body that were triggered as a part of a fight or flight mode, the heart rate would have increased, the muscles would have got more strength, other resources get diverted, all of that returns to normal, and the body prioritizes rest and recovery. So that's all a very natural, spontaneous procedure, and your dog hasn't got any control over any of that, and they're not going to be very aware of stuff that's happening to them while they're in that fight or flight mode. And when they come back out of the fight or flight mode and the rest and digest kicks in and everything starts to return to normal, they switch from their reactive brain back into their normal thinking brain. So the thinking brain, that's the brain that makes long-term decisions, thoughtful decisions. It's a much longer thought process. They'll take into consideration lots of different details and facts, and you'll make decisions based on all of that. So this is the kind of the part of the brain that would help you plan a shopping list, or it will help you plan your meal, or it will help you decide how you organise taking the kids to their clubs. You know, this is not an emergency thought process that's required, but the thinking brain is able to take in a lot more of that stuff. So when you're in your thinking brain, it certainly does attribute actions and rewards and outcomes, and it can put all of that together, and it can use that information as part of the learning, the dog's learning. So you know, the dog will know that if it puts its bottom on the floor and looks nicely at you, then you go to your pocket, you get a treat, and you reward him. While he's in that part of his brain, everything you do has an effect on your dog's behaviour. So if you're petting him and hugging him and talking to him and giving him treats and playing with him and getting his toy out and all of those things that he really loves, he's going to feel very rewarded for all of that stuff. But that's because he's in his thinking brain. So I guess really, for me, it feels like, although we've been talking about this for a long time, that we shouldn't do certain things when our dogs are in real distress, actually, it probably really doesn't make as much difference as we thought it did. And genuinely, if it did make that much difference, then we would be able to train them out of those things far more easily. So if your dog was having a very anxious reaction to fireworks, he's trying to hide under the table or behind the toilet or wherever it is that he feels the most safe. If he was in a brain that was thinking and processing, then you would be able to coax him out of there with a treat. So I guess I feel like that if your dog's in a situation where they're so anxious that you're trying to train them, trying to encourage them, trying to talk to them, trying to give them a treat, trying to give them an instruction, trying to help them somehow, if they're not paying any attention to that, then it probably doesn't matter if you're hugging them or putting down treats for them or letting them cozy in with you on the sofa. If you are able to get their attention and you can get them to sit or look at you or something like that, then be careful how you reward them at that point, because they are paying attention. So when you do give them the treat or you do give them a cuddle, they will associate that with what they were doing before. So I don't know if that really comes to a very definitive conclusion, but for me, I think it just takes the pressure off of us when we see our dogs in huge distress, that we are actually able to offer them at least some comfort and help them through the very worst of it, at least, without having to feel guilty or having to feel that we've done the wrong thing or whatever it is that we're feeling. I guess my only caveat here would be is that if you felt your dog was in such distress that anything you did with them could put you or them in danger, perhaps if they were very reactive, very focused, perhaps in that real deep fight or flight mode, if you would start trying to cuddle them at that point, then there's a risk that you might have the dog redirect onto you, because when they're in fight or flight mode, again, the brain is not really thinking things through. And if the dog is trapped, then they definitely won't be in flight mode. So their instant reaction when they're like that is to fight anything that really comes into their vision or it tries to interfere with them. So that would be my one little caveat, but that's not about rewarding anxious behavior. It's just about doing the right thing at the right time and not getting yourself into any kind of danger. So that's an interesting discussion. If you have any thoughts about that yourself, I'd love to hear them in the comments, and I'll speak to you again soon. Take care for now. Bye bye.